This is Andi Purewal for Boxing Social, and I'm delighted to be joined by Dominic Ingle down here at the press conference where his guy Liam Williams will be fighting on the weekend. Dom, how are you doing first?
Good. How difficult has it been for you to get this interview? How difficult?
It hasn't been easy, but I like a challenge.
It used to be easy, but I'm trying to make it difficult now for people to interview me. I think I'm spreading myself too thinly.
Why is that?
I don't know. I just need some original questions, I think, for once, and I think you may be the man to do it. You've got some good original questions, so I'm expecting some good stuff from you today.
All right, so just to ask quickly then, before we go into the questions, how has Liam been in camp?
Yeah, he's been good. This is his third camp with me. We obviously had a great camp for the last fight, and he's carried that over. I think is it 10 weeks? I think it's been a 10 weeks turnaround for this next fight, which is good for him. I don't think he's ever done that in his career. And the aim this year is to get 3 to 4 fights in before the end of the year. Get the middleweight belt, Lonsdale belt, won outright. And if a world title fight comes up in the meantime, we'll do that. I'd like to see him back down at light middleweight and take on a world champion. I think he's capable of that, and the way he's performing now, and hopefully that's how it's going to pan out towards the end of the year.
Joe Mullender, not really someone who's tried to get involved in the back and forwards today. Is Liam a character who maybe needs that bit of a bite about him to get up for a fight?
I'm just trying to find out what his personality type today, like a passive aggressive or something. He's really played it down. And, I'm just a good guy, and it just reminds me of so many of these Jason Statham films I've seen when I'm just a good guy, and then he gives you a good hiding. So he's playing it down a little bit, and I know for a fact he's coming to give everything he's got, lead Liam into a bit of a false sense of security, like it's going to be an easy fight, and then put it on him. So, I've seen it happen before, and it's his world title fight, Joe. He's going to raise his levels a couple of levels up, and it's not going to be an easy fight for Liam, I don't think. I mean, I'm seeing Liam stopping him if he sticks to the plan, but if he gets drawn in too early, he could go to the distance, to be honest.
Now, I spoke to you previously, and you mentioned Jaime Munguia as one of the names that you'd love to see Liam in with. How do you break down Jaime in terms of his style and his awkwardness because of his height?
Well, that's all, is it?
He's got to be about 5'10", 5'11", 6 even.
Is it? Well, give me an exact height.
I can't be exact.
If you ask me questions about height and make that a main thing about his tallness, then I'd expect you to know. I don't think he's 6 foot. And it wouldn't really make a difference. Liam's decent size anyway. I think he's about 5'11", and I don't think height's an issue. If you've got speed and good footwork, that kind of can negate height and reach. If you know what you're doing, you can work inside. You can get yourself inside shots. So I've watched him a few times. I watched him against Liam Smith. We had people over sparring Liam Smith for that fight, and basically what Joe Gallagher was teaching him and working on. Was effective in the fight, and the shot that he got caught with was the shot that him and Joe was working on to avoid, and it just Liam got complacent in that fight and forgot about the shot, and he actually got caught with it. So I think it's a fight. I think Liam Williams, they weren't his best performance against Liam Smith. I think Liam Williams has now found a new lease of life. He's got a lot of motivation. He's moving himself away from home. He's only 26, going on 27, so he's still got that hunger. And he boxed out of his skin last fight against a kid who everybody was building up to be the next big thing, and he boxed him to pieces. And that's the thing with Liam Williams: he can fight, he can box. He's very, very versatile if he wants to be. But sometimes he just sees the red mist and wants to have a tear up. So as far as Munguia is concerned, we'll have a plan in place. I'll watch a bit more of him. And he'd like to get him in a mandatory position for that fight, and maybe even get it over here. Get a bit of an home advantage. I think Liam Williams has definitely got what it takes to beat him. The kid's tough, he can punch a little bit, Munguia. But I think Liam Williams, I still don't think we've seen the best of him yet. I think he's improving every camp.
Munguia's been compared to being maybe the next version of a Canelo. Do you see that in him, that maybe one day he could reach those heights?
No, I don't think he's on the same path as Canelo. He's not a bad kid. He's not a Canelo. Canelo's advanced a lot over the years. I remember watching him box Matthew Atton and Ryan Rhodes, and Matthew Atton actually did the distance with him, which I was quite surprised. And he stopped Ryan Rhodes probably in the last round, and from then he's gone from strength to strength. Beat Khan, and he's moved on. He's gone up levels. So I don't think Munguia's on that same thing. He's only young. He's still got a lot to learn, but I think it'd be a good fight with him and Liam.
You mentioned previously that in this interview that Liam's moved up to Sheffield now. Talk about the sacrifices that boxers have to make, and how has Liam adjusted to leaving behind his family, leaving behind his old trainer, and having to adjust to a new way of life?
Well, that's what boxing's all about. If you want to be the best, you've got to make sacrifices. You've got to be doing what everybody else is not doing. You can't live a normal life with boxing. You can't have a family life really and have weekends with a family or family holidays. You've got a certain period of time, maybe between the age of 18 or when you turn pro, so maybe 32. And Liam's not in easy fights. He's made a lot of hard work of some fights. Whereas people like Billy Joe Saunders, he ain't got a mark on him. He avoids his contact as much as he can. Whereas Liam doesn't mind getting hit. So you've got a short career span, and you've got to make the sacrifices within that time. And I think talking to him about his other fights, sometimes he's cut corners, he's not made the weight properly. He's made the basic mistakes, but his fighting ability and his instinct has always got him through fights. And we can make him so much better if he gets rid of those mistakes and problems. And it's when you've had a fight like he did against Heffron, it's very easy to rest on your laurels and overlook everybody else. But I'm just trying to get him into the habit of keeping on it in between fights, maybe just having a week off out of camp and then back into it, because he needs to build momentum. He gets frustrated, he wants to fight all the time, but sometimes he's his own worst enemy, blowing up in weight and not being in the gym. And I think that was maybe from the place he was down in Wales. He was a bit isolated, probably couldn't motivate himself. And I think this has given him a new lease of life coming to Sheffield, being around positive people, and people are all motivated to get somewhere. So I think that's pushed him on.
Talk about yourself, talk about the life of a trainer. What motivates you to want to get up in the morning, put yourself through hell as much as what the fighters go through to try and keep yourself in condition as much as they are, to push them on, to keep on motivating them? Where's your drive and determination come from?
I don't say, when people say to me, talk about yourself, it could be a long conversation, it could go on for hours, because
I've got hours.
There's one thing I love doing, and that's talking about myself. No, I don't. Listen, it's a job. I enjoy the job. I've always been into training, whether it's training myself or training other people, but the end point is always getting the win, always putting the performance in. It gives me a lot of satisfaction when I see fighters like Liam Williams putting the performance that he did against Heffron, Billy Joe Saunders against Lemieux. But you want them kind of performances every 3 or 4 months. And with Billy, obviously, he lost a lot of momentum last year with the Lemieux fight. He didn't build on it. And hopefully, Liam's going to put on a performance, on Friday night against Mullinder. And we're going to move on to bigger fights. We had a great career with Kell Brook. There were some great fights with him. And it was always a pleasure to see him get in the ring and, put the hard work together and get the performance. And you're always, as a trainer, you're always striving for that kind of consistency with fighters. Kell Brook was very consistent throughout his career when he became, on his way to being a world champion in his performances. Obviously, his lifestyle sometimes between fights wasn't great, but he always put in the performance, and that's what you strive for with people like Liam Williams and Billy Joe Saunders and Kid Galahad. Consistent performances across the board, not brilliant one time and then rubbish the next. So that's the motivation, and to do that, you've got to get out of bed in the morning. You've got to motivate the fighters to be doing the same thing. They're away from home, from the family. You've got to give them, reason to do it. And I think, that last fight with Liam, everything was against him. I think he was the slight underdog. Everyone obviously probably be a boxer at super middleweight coming down to middleweight. Liam at light middleweight moving up. He took the chance and it paid off. He's been a 2-weight British champion. It'd be great to see him, get this belt outright at middleweight, and then move back down to light middleweight and take on the big fights from there.
When you take on new fighters, do you ever feel an added sense of pressure? So, for example, when Billy Joe come, everybody knew about the skill set that he had and how good he could be if he was to commit himself to the sport. Did you feel the pressure on yourself to bring that out of him because he chose you as his trainer?
You've got to do that because obviously Jimmy Tibbs did a great job with him. His amateur trainer before that did a great job with him. So you're under pressure as a trainer to make sure that when they put the performance in, that it's a good performance, because Jimmy Tibbs is an old school name. He's been around a long time, very good trainer. Same with Liam Williams and Gary Lockett. He'd been with Gary for most of his career. So if you train somebody and they don't put in the performance, automatically people will say, well, he's moved camps, he's got a different trainer, and it's not worked. So, but that's your job as a trainer. You can never overlook anybody. You can't think, well, this is a good kid, he can train himself. You've got to try and find out in a very short period of time what makes that fighter tick. Which buttons to press, the little things that they have, the little habits. before fights, and they've all got them, and it's being able to work around them and guide them into a fight in the best frame of mind and condition you can. And for the first fight with Billy Joe Saunders, he was Willie Monroe, was a class operator. I thought he gave Golovkin a decent fight up until getting stopped. But Billy broke him down in the press conference and then broke him down in the fight. It was actually an easy fight. And I said to him that, this is not going to be your best fight, this Monroe one, that it's going to be the next one. Have a week off, straight back into camp again. And that's what he did, and he put in a brilliant performance against Lemieux. It was a masterclass, it was enjoyable to watch. And it was like watching a film with a good ending. And that's what you're always striving for as a trainer. And sometimes these kids, they are hard work to keep in line, and it can get harder and harder. But we've had plenty of practice over the years. Naseem Hamid was one of the hardest guys to train. His performances were fantastic. They were great performances. But what you had to do to get him to that point, it was a lot of hassle and hard work. And when he put the performance in, it was all worthwhile. And that's basically that's what it is as a trainer: getting the fighter, getting the best out of the fighter, keeping him motivated, keeping him on track.
Talk about Naseem Hamid now. You've brought him up. What was he like in camp then, and listening to your stories here?
Oh yeah, we had great times, early on, and it was always, fun times. You had Johnny Nelson, Clifton Mitchell, Kevin Adamson, all these guys around. It was like a big party, really. And they all bounced off each other. Ryan Rose, it was a great time in the gym. And it was great. You never see, we'll never see that again, because it was a great atmosphere in the gym. He was a character, and whenever he came in, he just brought this aura about him, with him. And obviously he got a bit of harder work in the end, and then he eventually cleared off and did his own thing. But yeah, it were great times, the Britpop era. It was good times. It attracted a lot of people to the gym. It was a peak in the Ingle gym, But since that, we've had other people come in. You're never going to get another Naseem Hamid, just like you're not going to get another Billy Joe Saunders or a Kell Brook, And that's not what you strive for. You just strive to bring out the best of the potential of the fighters that you have.
Billy Joe is an old style fighter in the sense of he's just boxing moves and he's brilliant at it. Do you think he doesn't get enough credit for his style?
I think he does, but I think you get credit with consistency and putting in the performances. You need to be having 2 or 3 fights a year and keep yourself in the public mind, and not resting on your laurels and looking back what you've done. It's always what the next fight is, and I think people want Billy to have the consistency and to be in fights every 3 months or so, and fighting big names and showing everybody what he's got. That's what he needs to get credit for, but he needs to do it first to get the credit for doing it. He can't sit back and think, we can't live on the Lemieux fight forever and a day, can we? Just like we can't live on Naz's fights. We're always looking for the next performance.
Do you think that Lemieux win was the worst thing to happen for Billy, in the sense that people may not have wanted to fight him having watched it?
No, because I think money always talks, and you can always get the fights. I think the worst thing probably is the performance he put in, realising how good he was, and then thinking, what am I going to do to top that, and then not getting the fights put in front of him what he expected off the back of that. I think off the back of that he expected maybe Golovkin or Canelo or the big names, and then when you're not getting offered them fights, it is a bit of a letdown, and he's just made mincemeat out of Lemieux, who did all right against Golovkin. Probably gave Golovkin a better fight while it lasted than Billy Joe Saunders, and Billy Joe Saunders could have taken him out in that fight, but I just held him back and said, do what you're good at, put the performance in, because there's going to be fights when you're going to have to outbox people. He could have probably beat Lemieux from about round 7 onwards. He could have probably put it on him and stopped him. I think he could have done. But we chose to do the rounds, and you would have thought, people would have looked at that and thought, well, he's done the distance with Lemieux. He didn't stop him. We'll be attracted to that fight. It would make it, you'd be, Golovkin and Canelo would be more attracted to taking that fight, Billy winning on points and stopping Lemieux and putting, that kind of performance in. But it never happened, and I think Billy was bitterly disappointed not getting those fights.
I've always seen rumours that Canelo just isn't keen on ever fighting Billy. Have you ever seen or heard that?
In boxing there's an old saying, believe of half of what you see and nothing of what you hear. And that's the thing, and there's always whispers and rumours going around in boxing, and I'm not sure whether that's true or not, but we just want the big fights at the end of the day, and when the money's on the table, those fights can be made, can't they?
Obviously he's preparing for Shefati Sufi now. There's been stuff going around with WBO and the title not being on the line. What is the latest that you know about that? I leave that. Luckily, I'm just in the position where I train people. I just need to get him, have a date put in front of me and train him for that date. So I'll leave all the headache and all that kind of stuff to Frank Warren. He's been doing it for years. He knows what he's doing. And we'll have a chat next week. I think we're having a meeting and we'll find out where that's all going. Obviously, we just mentioned Canelo as well. He's fighting Danny Jacobs. What are your thoughts on that one?
Good fight. Jacobs is a good operator. He put in a great performance against Golovkin, I thought, and he's had good fights. So, he can be outboxed. Look at Canelo against Mayweather, a much smaller guy, and people will say, well, yeah, but Canelo's improved. Well, maybe he has, but he didn't look fantastic against Rocky Fielding, did he? I looked at that fight. Canelo looked heavy, he looked sluggish, and he must have underprepared for Rocky Fielding, knowing full well he wouldn't have beat him. And I think when you've had that mindset, when you're a good fighter, I think slipping into those type of ways, it measures you in a kind of way that you're training to the level of the opposition, when really you should be training, to the best you can be. People say the Floyd Mayweather fight was a bit of a glitch, but I think a fighter like Floyd Mayweather beats Canelo every time. Whether Jacobs can do that, he's a bigger guy, he's a harder puncher. It could be possible. He always puts in good performances, Daniel Jacobs. I think he's a great boxer. Not the most exciting, but good fight. So we'll see.
You said about Canelo maybe looking like he'd slipped into that mindset that he knew he was going to win. As a trainer yourself then, how difficult can it be to try and motivate someone, such as Billy Joe, for example? Shafati Sufi, he's a massive favourite going into it. How easy could it be for Billy Joe to slip into that mindset?
Well, I think he's had the gypsies warning, as they say, to coin a phrase, or the travellers warning, and that was like he's wasted the last 12 months, waiting for the big fights, and it's time to get a move on. So I think that's motivation enough for him. I think he just needs the opponent, and like any fighter will tell you, they want the opponent in the day, and that's what actually makes them kick up a gear and start, pushing the training even more. So that's the motivation he needs. And if they don't motivate themselves, they don't get motivated for them type of fights, and they're coming close to the fight, the only thing you can do is pull them out and tell them, look, you're not doing what you're told, you're not ready for this fight, and that's the way to do it. So they always know that's an option. If they don't start pulling the weight and they start cutting corners, and I've done it several times with fighters, pulled them out of fights when they're not pulling the weight in the gym, because they should be putting in a fantastic performance against the opposition, instead of just underestimating them, thinking, well, I'll just put in 70% and I'll still beat them. Naz used to do it a lot of times. He'd look at them, they'd review opponents, frankly get opponents lined up, and Naz would pick one out and think, I'll beat him in 4 or 5 rounds, and he would try to train accordingly. We'd have to drag him into the ring and make him train harder than he wanted to, and he would have beat those guys, comfortably. But if you don't want to beat him comfortably, you want to excel and look good doing it. And the times that Naz trained exceptionally well, he performed exceptionally well.
Is there ever any worry then? So, for example, the last 12 months, Billy Joe's had a few issues outside of the ring, which I don't really want to go over because he's been talked about numerous times. But do you ever look at it and think, right, he's done this, there's only so much that I can do. Maybe we have to call it a day, and he needs to go back to London or go elsewhere.
No. Listen. The thing is, fighters might give up on themselves, but as a trainer, you can never give up on a fighter. You've got to understand that that's your job, and he's always going to be the fighter might make the choice to go somewhere else. Kel went somewhere else. Naseem Hamid went somewhere else. That's what fighters do, and I've had fighters come to me, and the careers have excelled. And some fighters leave, and they do all right when they leave. Whether they get to where they need to be after leaving, I don't know. But you don't give up on fighters. You let them give up on themselves before you give up on them, because there's I could tell you loads of stories about fighters going to pack up and then turning themselves around and having a fantastic career from that point on. There's loads of them kind of stories, and when you've been through it, Johnny Nelson being one, another guy we had years ago called Isham Pickering being another, Junior Witter, John Thaxton. There's loads of these guys, who've got to the point of ready to pack up, and you've just guided them through, and then they've had a second career or a second rebirth type of thing, and come good.
Dominic Ingle, you made me work for the interview. I'd like to think it was okay. What did you make of it?
Yeah, you pulled some out of the bag, because like I said to you before, if we go down the same route with the same old questions, we're just going to stop the interview, aren't we? I was thinking of becoming a prima donna, but I don't think I'm going to be able to do that, am I? Because you've pulled it out of the bag, you've asked some good questions, and it's always a pleasure being interviewed by you, yeah.
Dominic Ingle, I appreciate your time. I've kept you long enough. Thank you for speaking to Boxing Social once again. I'll see you soon.
No problem. Thanks for the interview, pal.